Good afternoon. My name is Professor Alistair Sinclair Smythe. In the near future of Great Britain, Alex the Large is a thug, a brute, a savage beast. The leader of a small group of droogs, they head out every night, under the influence of drugged milk, to commit acts of violence and destruction. Societal symptoms of the world that they inhabit, which is abandoned any hope of the future and is focusing more on short-term personal needs rather than the good of the greater whole. He's ultimately captured after a accidental murder during a botched robbery, and subjected to a technique supposed to cure him of his violent impulses, only to find that being unable to respond to personal threats or actions against him, he is just as much a victim as those he had victimized originally. He is returned and supposedly cured, becoming just as violent as he had been before. Alex and his cohorts are symptomatic of a society at large. There's many scenes of violence and destruction. Many of the areas are run down or otherwise abandoned. The government seems more interested in political prisoners than actually dealing with the police. And at one point, after his release from prison, Alex discovers that two of his more brutal former associates have actually become policemen, using their new position to actively beat and terrorize people, including their former leader, because of their new positions of power. The treatment of which he is cured involves certain hypnotic drugs and forcing them to be subjected to numerous violent images to create a psychological response to even the thoughts of violence. This has the side effect of removing his ability to enjoy the works of Ludwig van Beethoven, as his music had been used as background in some of the more violent imagery. This removes not only his ability to defend himself in an increasingly violent society, which, as I said, he was primarily symptomatic of, but also removes his one positive trait, his ability to enjoy classical music. He has become the titular Clockwork Orange, a man as if by the turning of a key the sweetness of human love may flow forth. Programmed to be good, he is unable to act in a way that would actually make him good, as not only is he now prone to the actions of others, but even his positive actions are programmed. He has no personal choice in whether to be good or bad. With the apparent success of the project, Alex is released into the general population, which proves to be a problem, not so much for society as for himself. Given that he was symptomatic of the underlying violence of society itself, he is now unable to defend himself against it, either emotionally or physically, and as a result is victimized to the extent that he is forced to take refuge with a man whom he had previously victimized. The end result of this is that his programming is used against him, showing that an attempt to make a man good by design against his will ultimately fail. Cured of his treatment, he is now able to act in any way he wishes once again, and dreams about being able to return to his violent ways. In a chapter of the book, which was not adapted into the film we were discussing, it was ultimately realized that, having reached the old age of 18, he no longer feels such an impulse. And upon meeting an old friend of his, one of his former droogs, who has settled down and become a married man with a good business, he begins to wonder perhaps it might be time for him to settle down as well, realizing that even if he should attempt to do so, it will be ultimately futile, since should he decide to, for example, have a family, the society that created him the way he is would undoubtedly do the same to his own children, proving that even if he should attempt to do something similar to what had been done to him, raise his son to be a good person, it would not matter in the long run, as the flaws of society which had created him are still there. The underlying theme of the film and the novel it came from is that of personal choice. Alec had been tempted to be cured by being deprived of that choice, unable to act in a way in which he would be able to act upon his violent impulses, or in any respect to be able to defend himself from the violence of society which he had been systemic of. Any attempts to paper over the issue by making him better would ultimately fail, regardless of who it was used upon, because the problems of society are still there under the surface. And even if Alex should decide to become a better person of his own accord, the problems will still be there and will continue to affect his children and any further children, resulting in the ultimate collapse of society, since none of the actual issues have been addressed. Merely an attempt by politicians to deal with the situation in stopgap measures, presumably for political means, and resulting in ultimate destruction, since no one really wants to deal with the deeper issues at hand. I'm Professor Alastair Sinclair Smythe. Good afternoon.